Hi everyone! Welcome to the softschool educational project. I'm Kate and we are continuing our series of 3ds Max lessons. Today we'll take a closer look at copying and isolating objects. We'll also learn how to work with useful tools like groups and layers. There are time codes below the video for your convenience. So I hope this video will be useful for you. Please subscribe to our channel for more updates, like it, and join us on Patreon for even more valuable 3ds Max content. You'll find the link in the video description. Learn easily with softschool. The first topic of today's lesson is copying objects. There are several ways to clone objects in 3ds Max. The first is to use the Move tool plus hold Shift. This opens the Clone Options menu, where you can select the clone mode, set the number of copies and the names for the future objects. We'll look at the clone modes later in this lesson. You can also copy objects in the same way using the Shift key with the Rotate or the Scale tool. Let's delete unnecessary copies. The second way to copy an object: select it, right-click, clone. Ctrl-V hotkey. This method allows you to create only one copy, and it will be located at the same point as the original object. After copying, you'll have to move it manually. It's important to know that unlike other programs, 3ds Max doesn't copy objects using the Ctrl-C hotkey, because by default, this hotkey creates a camera in the viewport. If you accidentally create a camera in the viewport, you'll notice that the usual navigation doesn't work. In this case, simply minimize the viewport and delete the unwanted camera from any of the projections. Going back. Great, now let's talk about the clone modes. When we clone an object in the copy mode, we create completely independent objects. We can modify the properties of one, and it won't affect the properties of the others. On the other hand, we can clone an object in the instance mode. We create dependent objects. When one changes, all the instances change. Dependent objects are displayed in bold font, while independent objects are displayed in regular font. It's important to use the instance mode when creating similar objects because it significantly saves the RAM. However, if you intend to modify single objects, you should check whether it's depend. We do it to avoid accidentally changing all instance objects. To break the dependency, click the Main Unique button. If we select several objects and click Make Unique, the program will ask us if we want to make the selected objects unique with respect to each other. If we choose No, the selected objects will become unique with respect to the previous group, but the dependency between them will be saved. If we choose Yes, each object will be unique. Another useful feature in 3ds Max is the ability to easily select dependent objects. To do this, click on Edit, select Instances. The copy and instance modes are the main ones we'll use most often. The third mode, Reference, is used for complex polygonal modeling. It will be discussed in more detail in our modeling tutorial series. The next topic is object isolation. At work, we often need to focus our attention on one or more objects without being distracted by other objects in the scene. There are two ways to do this in 3ds Max. The first is object isolation. Select the object, right-click, and choose Isolate Selection. To exit isolation mode, right-click and select End Isolate. Or use the Alt-Q hotkey to enter isolation mode and the Ctrl-Alt-Q to exit it. You can also simply click this button to enter and to exit the mode. So, as you've already noticed, this allows us to isolate an object, make all the necessary configuration, then unisolate it and continue working in the full scene. The second way is to hide objects. You can select one or more objects, right-click, and use the hide selection or, for example, hide unselected command. To unhide all objects in the scene, click on Hide All. You can also use the Unhide by Name menu to make specific objects visible again. These functions will be really useful when working with large scenes that contain a lot of elements. I highly recommend using them. Guys, please write in the video comments what topics you'd like to see on our channel. Also, don't forget to check out our Patreon. There you'll find even more useful content to help you become a true 3D visualization professional. You can find the link in the video description. Next, let's look at the topic of groups. To make our work with sets of objects more convenient and efficient, we use a simple yet useful function called groups. Now, all the objects in my scene are independent. To unite them, I select the objects I want and click Group, give it a name if necessary, and then click OK. Great! Now it's much easier to manipulate these objects without having to select them individually each time. What can we do with the group? We can open it, work with each object individually, and then close it again. When the group is open, its dimensions are highlighted by pink frames, and by grabbing them, we can still work with the group as a whole, even in the open state. Next, we can detach and attach objects to the group. Select the desired object, click Attach, and if the group is open, click on the frame. Or, if it's closed, we click Attach and click on any objects within the group. To exclude an object from the group, we select it and click Detach. Well, what else can we do? We can attach a group to another group. To do this, I create another group and click Attach. In this case, you can expand them sequentially, first the main group, then the subgroup. Similarly, you can close them one by one, or open all the subgroups at once by clicking Open recursively. You can also close them all with one movement. For this, select the main group and click Close. There can be any number of subgroups within the main group. If we don't need this group anymore, we can ungroup it. In this case, the subgroup that was inside will remain intact. If we want to break all the subgroups, we click on the Explode command. Well, and the final topic for today's video is layers. Layers are essential when working on large scenes. They allow us to categorize objects, simplifying the workflow. Now, let's take a look at the function of the Layer Explorer. Open the Layer Explorer. I moved it to the right side of the screen for convenience. This way, I have easy access to it when I need it, and it doesn't take up space on the left side of the screen, as is the default setup in 3ds Max. By default, there is a zero layer, and any of the objects we create will be in it. To create a new layer, click on an empty area to make sure no layer is selected. Then click on the plus icon. Give the layer a unique name. If you click the plus icon when one of the layers is selected, the program will create a sublayer inside selected one. Layers can be moved, nested, or extracted, similar to folders on a computer. To add objects to a layer, activate it, select Objects, and click Add to Active Layer. Another way is to select objects first and then create a new layer by clicking the plus icon. The objects will automatically be placed on the new layer. Let's rename it. When you select any objects in the viewport, the layer it's on will automatically open. If you don't need it, click Display and then check Auto Expand to Selection. Now, when you select an object, the layer it's on is highlighted, but it doesn't open. So I think I'll keep this option to myself. Okay, so what can we do with the layer? Firstly, we can hide it by clicking on the eye icon. This is very useful for our work. Next, we can double check to select all the objects inside the layer. We can also freeze the layer. In this case, no objects can be selected or moved. For example, it can be useful to freeze a drawing so that it doesn't move. To make that snaps works with frozen objects, we've already checked this option when we discussed the topic of snaps. Be sure to watch that video if you missed it. Okay, let's unfreeze the objects. In the next function, we can make objects invisible in the render. To do this, double-check to select the layer's objects and click on the teapot icon. This can be useful, for example, for auxiliary objects that we don't want to appear in the render. Finally, we can select all objects in the layer and display them as boxes. For example, if you create a tree planting in an exterior scene, you can use this feature to prevent high poly heavy models from slowing down your viewport. But in the render, the objects will appear as they should. These two buttons allows us to hide or freeze all layers at once. There is also a search function by name and filtering objects by type in the Layer Explorer. So, of course, if your project is small, there is no need to categorize objects by layers. But if you're working with full interiors or exteriors, it becomes essential. For interiors, we usually create separate layers for walls, windows and doors, floors, furniture, and decor. For exteriors, this could include architecture, grass, trees, urban elements, and so on. Of course, the types of layers can vary depending on the specific projects and your preferences. And yet, it's a very handy and functional tool that I highly recommend to use. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. Leave your comments below and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Also, don't forget to check out our Patreon link in the description for even more interesting and useful content. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.